Hey everyone, Brandon here with Galway Precision. Today we're going to go over part 2 of our first 100 rounds and parts plan for the TX22. Sorry, the camera's moving a little bit. Had to switch over to my Galaxy S9. The iPhone finally completely died. Not that I'm too upset about that. But, so here we are. Alright. We did the first 100 rounds, and now what we're going to do is we're going to tear it down. We're going to go over what parts we're going to make for it and some different ideas we have. First and foremost, let's go ahead and lock and clear. We're visually and physically empty. So I'm going to go ahead and take the slide off. And we'll start with the slide. So set the frame off to the side. Now, obviously, one of the first things we'll probably do is a compensator. Actually, trigger, no, there's a lot of stuff we're going to do. But we're trying to decide right now if we're going to go a compensator for the adapter or a compensator that actually goes into the barrel pocket and sleeves. But before we get too in-depth on the slide, I want to point out one thing. This design feature really is something else. Now, it comes apart like any other striker fired, but it is still a straight blowback. Now, the way you can do a straight blowback is if you have the barrel in a fixed position. The way Taurus has fixed, so to speak, the design that has been around forever, where the barrel is stationary and everything moves around it, their locking mechanism is pretty brilliant. As you can see, it's all railed in and you have one cutout. And then there's your takedown. So the way this works is when you're putting it back together, the back part of the slide moves the takedown out of the way. You slide this in, takedown pops up. It's now fixed in place like a P22, SR22, you name it, any 1911 22 on the market, you name it, fixed barrel, straight blowback. But it comes apart easily. That is a huge thing, especially for comp shooters who are going to be running this in competition. It makes a big deal. The only part we're not going to take out of the slide will be the front of the striker assembly. The extractor and stuff is in, just because it's swedged in place really well. It's fitted in there. It does come out, but it takes about 10-20 minutes to take apart and put back together because of the amount of hammering you got to do. So that will be a completely separate video for another time. But we'll probably do like an oops extractor kit with this extractor and spring, something we're looking at. This is a steel extractor. I'm going to go out on a limb and say probably tool steel since it's an extractor. Woo, pardon me. But let's go ahead and take the striker and striker assembly out. So if you're following along and you're wanting to play in yours, be sure to keep your thumb over that striker because it's under a lot of spring tension. And now, with the back plate off, you can pull the whole assembly out. Alright, now your lifter might fall off like that just did, but it is multiple pieces. Alright, so there's your striker. Okay. Got your striker guide and spring, and we're already in works for aluminum and steel striker guides. Alright. Now, the striker assembly itself is pretty ingenious. By the way, this is also metal. Alright. Oh yeah, before I forget, these are going to be going up on the website soon. You guys keep asking where I'm getting my screwdrivers, and we went ahead and ordered some to add to the toolkits and to sell by themselves on the website. So there's a tiny little screwdriver. Alright, but it is metal. It's not plastic. So that metal and metal are interacting. It goes in this little pocket here. The spring goes up in this pocket. Sits. So the way the striker functions, you'll notice we got a little arm sticking off right there. So when it fires, if the lifter's in the way, that's as far as it goes. The striker won't protrude out of the breech face. Lifter lifts, the striker can go all the way forward, exits the breech face, hits the rim, comes back. And that's it. It's a real nice simple mechanism. I'm sure people ask for different housings. That may be something we look at in the future, but I can tell you right now, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. All right, changing the weight of this isn't going to help anything. It will probably cause issues because this thing is very well balanced. So we'll probably not do anything for the housing. The guide, the striker itself, the lifter springs, of course we're looking at parts for those. Alright, so let's go ahead and put our slide back together. Now, like I said, we'll go over in another video, but you remove your striker housing, knock that pin out, and then you take a wood dowel or plastic punch, and you can drive the bolt face, the breech face, out. But that's all we're looking at on the slide. Obviously, we'll be doing a rail for it, because the way that the top of the slide is designed and the sight styles that they're using, we'll be able to make a full-length rail that will cover from here to the end, and the screw for the front mount will come up into the bottom of it, and we'll probably make it to where you reuse your stock screws if possible, and then the screw on the top will go down, and you'll have a nice flat pick rail surface for mounting optics. Alright, so now let's get into the bread and butter of the pistol, the frame. Alright, so we're going to take our 2mm and drive the frame pins out. They're just standard roll pins, so it doesn't matter which direction you drive from. But in order to take the locking block and trigger assembly and everything out, you have to drive all the pins out, because the locking block, trigger, all that, and the fire control unit all have to come out as one. The trigger bar goes inside the fire control unit, and the grip frame holds it in place. So we're just going to pull straight up on everything and out and set it down. Now let's talk about this takedown. Metal, of course, not plastic, but it's pretty ingenious the way it's set up. Alright, so you see this little lip, that's where the spring sits, and it sits inside here. Like so. Okay, so it sits on that, compresses against it, and gives you proper tension up and down. We probably won't do an extended takedown. No use for it, because you're going to be using this for competition and training. Even if you use it as a carry gun, there's enough to grab there. Taurus did a real good job of inletting right here on the grip frame, so you can actually get to the takedown. Now comes the fun part, cramming this spring back in here. Took this apart the other day to go ahead and get ready for the video, and this took me about 10 minutes alone, because you got to kind of squeeze it and push all at the same time. Which sounds easy. However, as you can see, it is not. And I have big fat fingers, so kind of hard to get it to cooperate. But eventually, you can get it to cooperate, pop back in. So, we won't be making that. There's no need to replace what's already a good design. Alright. Not going to pull the fire control unit apart. A lot of people right now are going, oh! I'm going to tell you why. There is a lot going on in this thing. I started to pull it apart, and you've got springs here, you got springs here for the sear, you got a couple springs in here for the safety detent, and this pin, knock that pin out, and I believe the sear pin. This whole thing just was a whole lot of fun trying to put this back together. Being a 22, we're probably not going to do any springs for back here. Mostly because you need as much force as you can get without it affecting the trigger pull too much to get a rimfire to go off. They are already producing a non-safety model for those that want that, but it's just a standard, almost, it's not really a crossbolt because you push a crossbolt back and forth, but the way that this works is when the safety goes up, and you see it, that arm right there, when it's up, it completely blocks the trigger bar from being able to move. Alright, so fire control unit. Now, here's where the bread and butter's at. Locking block and trigger assembly. Now, as I stated in the first 100 rounds video, the part 1, they are going to make this in 9mm. They already told us this at SHOT. This isn't new information. It's going to be exciting. You can tell by the way it's molded. They have the pocket there for a different locking block. Okay, whole different setup. So either it's going to be a kit, or they're just using the same mold, and some things internally will be different. Excuse me. Now, your mag release is swappable. You go down in there, flathead screwdriver or something, move your mag spring out of the way. You can reach in with some pliers and grab a hold of it, pull it out, and flip it to the other side. It's got a cutout. I'm going to take it all the way out because it's kind of a pain in the butt getting my big fat fingers in there, but you can see on both sides it does have a cutout so that it is fully ambidextrous. You can swap the mag release to the opposite side, and you just go in like you would any Glock Smith & Wesson style. Pretty much every striker fire is similar to this now, just because honestly it's an easy way to do things and it's efficient and it works. So that is swappable. Okay. Now, so here's our locking block, and as you pull it out, here's what it's going to look like. You got your slide lock here. That goes right up into that cutout on your locking block when we put it back together. Trigger bar, which goes inside this cavity and links up. So when we push it all back in together, it's going to go in as one unit. Boop, just like that. Okay. So we're going to take our slide lock off, take the spring out. And here we have our trigger bar, trigger return spring. They've got it sprung on a blind pin here, and standard coil comes back here. Now, I'm going to remove this and we're going to talk about the trigger and why it's going to be easy to make triggers for this thing, because we're literally replacing only the shoe. Alright, so the way that they have done this design, if you do not grab the trigger properly, if you try and hold it way up high, if you go to the middle instead of down low where it's supposed to, the way the trigger cams, notice it's moving. If it doesn't cam properly, there's a cutout, and once we take the trigger completely out, we'll show you. There is a, this pin is swedged in, and you'll need your 1/16 or 2mm. And my true 1/16 has wandered off, so for now we'll just push it out with an 050 and we'll just take the whole thing out. Now it is, what I mean by swedged, you'll notice it's tapered on one end. That's the end that goes to the right back in the hole, and you give it a tap and it swedges it in place so that it can't move while you're firing. So the way this works, here's our trigger shoe, and I'm about to pull it apart so you can see everything. But notice you've got the cutout here. You got this shelf. So when it's all lined up, like so, if you don't pull the trigger right, the safety hits that shelf. Can't go. Once you get correct leverage on it, it cams it out of the way and the trigger goes back. Brilliant design without having to add a whole bunch of extra stuff. Bursa does something similar with the BP 9cc. All you got to do is have that nice camming action, and if you're not pulling the trigger correctly, it's not going to work. Now there's one thing that's a little misleading about this trigger. You're going to go to this point and you're going to see what you think is an adjustable Allen. That is actually just a blind pin. It's not blind, it does push out, but they just use that for assembly purposes. It doesn't actually adjust anything. So we'll take our 1/16, push that on out, 2mm either or. Now the moment you do, this cam is under spring tension, so it may kind of pop out in a way you don't want. Just give it a tap and drive the pin out. As you can see, smooth pin. So turning that's not going to adjust anything. It's got a little bit of a flare to it so that it holds everything in tight. So here's the main part of the trigger. And the way this thing sits, you see our cam here, goes in like this. That's your trigger bar pin. Take that out for a second. And the spring rests right there. So once it's cammed correctly, trigger will swing all day long. So really, really a neat design. So yeah, we're going to definitely be doing a trigger shoe. Eric's already got a design in the works for a nice flat face, competition ready trigger. And of course we'll be doing the guide rod. Now this guide rod does not come apart, it's not serviceable, but we're already looking at what spring rates. Honestly, we'll probably stay with the stock spring rate and just go with a steel guide rod like we do on a lot of the 22s. Alright, side tangent aside there, let's go ahead and put everything back together now. So before we put this in, I'm going to take our trigger bar pin, put it in, attach our trigger bar right there, always on the right side. Cam goes in, take our pin, get it started, and we're going to tap it home. Don't got a bead on it, just give it a tap. You'll feel it pop past the plastic sleeve, and that's when you know it's ready to go. Alright, so we're going to put that in. We're going to take our trigger pivot, put it through the cam, making sure we've got the chamfered end going through first. Get it lined up, take our 3/32 and just give it one good tap. We're not trying to drive it through, we just want it to stay in place. Alright, so it's not moving. We'll go ahead and spring our trigger bar first. It's going to just slide up over that hook like so. And take our tiny needle nose, get it back on there. Take our little screwdriver, make sure it's seated all the way. We got proper tension. Take our slide lock spring. It's going to have grease on it from the factory. Just put the greased end back in the pocket. I like to compress the spring in the pocket as I'm raising that up. And we're ready to put the fire control unit and trigger bar, get it all connected, and put it back in the frame. Now what I do like about putting this thing back together is that the takedown makes a nice perfect locator. It's a big hole in the locking block, it's hard to miss. So you can get it going first and then kind of finagle in. Still getting used to the wider view on my camera as opposed to the iPhone, work phone. Alright, so once we start seating this thing, it's all just going to kind of pop in place, just like so. Alright, now before we put our pins in, we'll hold your fire control unit down, but just move the trigger. You'll see the lifter lift. Alright, and push up on the slide lock, make sure it just pops down in its hole. We're ready to put everything together. So far we've got the pick rail we're in the design of. For optics, we're looking at an extended slide release for competition use. We're looking at trigger shoes, guide rods. There we go. You may have to pull it a little bit forward just to get the proper spacing. So if you're hitting it like I just was and it's not going, stop. Don't keep beating on it. Just pull back, make sure your holes are lined up. We'll be doing the trigger shoe, compensator, pick rail, holsters, of course, and I will probably make both competition holsters and carry holsters, because like we went over in the first 100 round video, some people are more comfortable carrying a 22, and a 22 is a damn sight better than a rock in your pocket, because this is 16 rounds out of the box. So you got 16 plus 1, and you can dump a whole lot of rounds into somebody's face, chest, whatever. Shoot them in the gut, make them let go. Shoot them in the mouth, make them regret it, as we like to say around here with smaller pistols. But honestly, all in all, I'm very, very impressed with this gun, and the price point is right. I mean, for under $400, you have a really great either beginner competition pistol, beginner carry pistol, training pistol, or if you're advanced. I mean, it's a great training pistol to run. That's not going to cost you a ton of money in ammunition, and runs really well. We saw that in the other video. So I'm real excited to get some parts rolling for this thing. You know, can't wait to get it done and start getting them out there in people's hands and see what they think. But now we'll talk real quick about the trigger. Alright, so you see how it cams down and moves. If you just try and pull straight back, you'll hear it. You hear that? You can feel it. It's hitting. You can't pull. So you have to give it the correct cam. If you don't, you can force it, but you're gonna eventually break that trigger, and really the only way is because it cams down. Eventually you're gonna cam it without meaning to. But you can sit there and try and squeeze that thing straight back all day long, and it ain't going anywhere. The moment you come down here, bang. And that's it, guys. We'll do a real quick functions test. Alright, so weapon is on fire. Go ahead and rack it. Pull the trigger, hold the trigger to the rear, rack it. Here's the reset. Pull, should fire, rack, place it on safe. Nothing should happen. Fire. And remember, it is a 22. Don't sit here and dry fire it without a snap cap all day, because you'll beat up your breech face and you'll beat up your striker. But 1 or 2 isn't going to hurt anything before everybody goes, oh, he's dry firing it. But that's it, guys. We're looking at compensator, pick rail, trigger shoe, holsters, probably an extended mag release for competition use, and a lot of other goodies. So I'm real excited about this. I think this is going to be a very well received pistol by Taurus. And again, as I talk about in the other video, all semi-automatic pistols are going to be made in America and at their Georgia facility. So that is a big step in the right direction. And that's going to wrap it up, guys. If you got any questions about the TX22 or anything we've gone over, feel free to email me at that's Tango Echo Charlie Hotel at GallowayPrecision.com. Be sure to follow us on social media here on YouTube. Like, comment, and subscribe below. Be sure to follow us on Gunstreamer, Facebook, Instagram, and Vimeo. And as always, be safe, be accurate, and God bless.